Welcome back to Pink Lion Podcast. Today's conversation is one that really sits at the intersection of life, death, and what it means to come back changed. I'm joined today by Matan from Heaven's Hospital, someone whose journey into this work didn't begin with curiosity, but with a near-death experience that shifted his entire perspective on life and connection. What I'm really looking forward to exploring today is not just what happened in that moment, but what came after. How do you return to your life after experiencing something beyond it? How does your understanding of connection, of spirit, of even being here begin to change? Since that experience, Matan has been opening more deeply into his intuition and mediumship and stepping into mentorship, helping others navigate their own awakening in a grounded and intentional way. In this episode, we're going to talk about his life before, what he experienced during his near-death experience, how that shaped his path into mediumship, and what he's learning now through both his own development and working with others. Matan, I'm really grateful you're here. I know
Thank you
this
so
conversation,
much.
it's just going to open up a lot for people. So, yeah, you're welcome. Thanks for joining me.
Yeah, I'm so excited. This is just a great topic, and I think that some people don't really come across such an intense topic, in my opinion, because there's so many factors to it. So I think it's so great that we're talking about it today.
Yeah, I do too. I always try to go back as far as you can kind of like recall. And my understanding of your journey of your life is not you didn't you weren't aware of your mediumship. Can you talk about what your life was before all of this started to happen?
Yeah, absolutely. So we see online a lot people talk about, and of course, people's stories are unique. People a lot of times talk about, oh, as a kid, I would get signs, symbols, feelings, etc. As a kid, I got nothing, absolutely nothing. I didn't start my mediumship journey until I was in my 20s. And that I think, again, compared to other people, is a little different because I come from a very scientific family. And so growing up, I was, raised around the idea of like a hypothesis and a theory. And if you can't test it or blind study test it, it doesn't exist. And because of that, I just had nothing. I mean, I was a sensitive kid, like as, and I cared for other people, but who doesn't, right? We all as kids, come from a loving place of love and desire to help others. But as far as like sensing, feeling, it just didn't happen. And I grew up, was taught and led to believe that, this kind of work is just BS, to be honest. And if I couldn't study it or diagnose it or understand it or analyze it, like I said, it didn't exist to me. So compared to maybe other people on their journey, I just was mute to the whole thing ever existing,
And
which
you know what? Me too. I mean, sort of me too. I mean, I had some experiences that made me understand, but did you ever walk into a room and like understand the energy there that maybe you picked up on prior to like even seeing the body language? Like you just were like, oh, what did I walk into? Type of thing.
that's a great question. I think because I was adopted at a young age, I was adopted when I was almost 2. I think that gave me a different viewpoint of the world in general. So I think I just kind of explained it in my head to that. I didn't explain it to like the understanding about energy and the way we interact with the energy of a space and people.
Mhm.
I really just chalked it up to, oh yeah, like, I see things differently. Um, but there wasn't like a understanding and like a follow through the way other people talk about of like, oh, you step in the room, you can feel the energy. I was kind of like, oh, okay, like people, my mom's here, whoever's in the room, oh, okay, they're there, they're talking. But I didn't really, again, have a sense of a reaction the ways people can have a reaction through their development or their own experience. It was very just
Yeah.
like, oh, people are in the room.
You had a scientific background, but did you have a religious one at all?
Great question. I grew up in the Jewish faith. My grandmother was really the religious kind of go forth person in the family. She was the one that would bring rituals into the family, like doing, Friday night, dinners and Shabbat candle lighting. But we were more, again, our science in my life and my family's dynamics really pushed much stronger than any kind of religious continuum.
Uh-huh.
The Jewish faith does speak to the importance of analyzing their own religion. We have a whole set of books that are written about the religious text that, analyzes the religious text and says, hey, this is kind of weird. Why is that? And there's like stories and kind of like fables that go into those books as well. So it's interesting that the religious faith that I was brought up in also kind of connected with the kind of analytical world of science. So at any point in my life, there was always a discussion of analyzing something, whether it's, oh, why does this tree look that way today? Versus like, oh, why did the dog decide to, pee on the carpet today? There was always an analytical discussion. Whether it was whether my grandmother was whether my grandmother was connecting it back to a religious like meaning or purpose, or my grandfather was saying, well, this is how science works. So again, analytical thought and process was very prevalent growing up for me.
Interesting. That to me is so interesting because I can relate to it in probably a way that many people don't understand. But I hope that they do. But that can be kind of pressure based, I think.
There definitely was, absolutely. There was definitely pressure about how you think, how you relate to other people. I also think being an only child was a unique perspective. I think it brought me, or maybe even a little bit forced me to have to grow up maybe faster than maybe the average child. Because if you could communicate with adults on kind of life lessons, you would be sitting by yourself reading a book or just like playing with Legos in the corner.
Right.
So I think that definitely, I think now in hindsight, definitely was like a big part of how I was able to conceptualize mediumship and where I am now. But it definitely was very isolating at some points for sure.
Yeah, I bet it was. So you had mentioned to me that you had two near death experiences, one
Yes.
when you were younger and then one in your college years. So go ahead and take us through each one of those. And then we're going to get to a point where between the NDE and the mediumship, like there's just going to be some things that we're going to need to peel back. And feel free to just share as much or as little as you want. Okay.
For sure, definitely. I mean, I'm an open book and I will say basically anything. So when we talk about the first NDE, I'm gonna use NDE because saying near death experience multiple times might drive someone crazy. So
Right.
the NDE, the first one was I was a kid. I was in sixth grade. I was at a kind of, end of the summer swimming pool party that, your one of your classmates who has a pool will have. And because I grew up in a very warm environment, it gets like 115 during the summer. So everyone's in the pool. So we're at the pool and I jump in the water because, I'm also in the swim team at that point. I'm swimming around and this other classmate jumps on my back. And when I mean on my back, I really mean more toward the connection of my back to where my spinal cord is on the sixth, seventh vertebra. And all I feel in myself is sink to the bottom of the pool. And as soon as I sink to the bottom of the pool, I blacked out, but it wasn't like a blackout of like when you like faint or something. It was like I felt my body go boing and I heard a boing noise and all I saw was black. And I could see like the inner side right before the boing happened. I saw the inner side of my eye sockets. Like I was looking out through eye sockets, but it was all black. And it was peaceful. It wasn't scary, but it was very strange. It felt very like I was kind of like floating in this like kind of like lava kind of floating on a boat kind of feeling.
Interesting. That's so cool, actually.
Yeah. But it was very quick, and then the next thing I know, my friend's dad, who is a doctor, is pulling me out of the pool and starting to do compressions, and I hear as I'm coming back to my body, and again, in hindsight, I didn't really know what I was doing, I just thought I was waking up, right? But now in hindsight, from what I know, I was returning to my body, and I hear my mom screaming in the background. I'm like, "Oh my god, do something,
Yeah.
mom!" Of course, it's a panic.
Yeah.
That was really the first one, and it's funny that I didn't really think about it until much, much later, not even till after my second NDE that I kinda was like, "Oh, that kinda had similar themes to the more, elaborate one that I had in undergrad
So
experience."
what happened when you were an undergrad?
So in undergrad, I was at a party, I went from my friend's house for her birthday. We had some champagne. I was walking to another friend's house for the continuation of the party. And in order to do that, you had to walk through my campus. And on my campus, there is a giant cathedral. And right next to the cathedral, you have two types of steps. You have like the regular stair steps to a building that are like the smaller, multi-layered steps. And then on the side of it, they had these giant like block steps that you could like sit on and even have lunch on, but they were ginormous. And so, of course, me being like that kind of fun, like kind of go lucky kid and person, I like to jump on things. I used to do gymnastics. Like that's just second nature to me to just kind of mess around or whatever. And I get ready to jump onto one of the large steps that go to the cathedral, and I slip and I fall backwards and I hit the second, third vertebra of my back into the step. And
Wow.
so kind of to put this into some context for everybody, a I was in my last year of college. The 2 years before, that, my fiancé passed away, and we didn't get to have a kind of closure experience, and so I'm pre-setting this up because it will make sense. So, I shoot out of my body, and I'm very aware that I shoot out of my body at this point. It was, like, instant, and I go whoosh, like, it's like a funnel, and I funnel into this room, and this room is all white, and there's like flowers like around and like a beautiful fountain in the middle with like just like a little like string thing, like like a fountain, like a regular fountain you would see like at someone's garden. And then there's a white bench, a white marble bench, and I kind of see everything in front of me. I'm observing it, and then I walk to the bench, and as I'm walking up, I see a figure sitting there, and I'm like, this is very very strange. And I walk up, and the figure turns to me, and it's my fiance who passed. And he goes, "What are you doing here?" And I go, "What do you mean, what am I doing here? I mean, what are you doing here?" I mean, like, this is like it felt so it was so real. There's this peace and serenity and this feeling of this space, but I was kinda, like, very confused. I was like, "What are you doing here?" He says and so we start talking, and we have a kind of a closure moment, and I say, "Are you happy? Are you safe?" Because how he passed was very dramatic and kind of tragic. And he goes, "Yeah, I'm whole. I'm at peace. I'm free." And I was like, "Wow, okay." And so we're talking, and then he turns to me. He goes out of nowhere. He goes, "You need to go now." I go, "What do you mean?" He goes, "It's not your time. You have other things to learn." And I go, "Oh, okay." He's like, I gotta walk you back." And so we like get up and he walks me back to where I came from. There's like no door, but it was just like walking me back. And as I'm walking, another door to my left opens up. And I see this energy, these like little like energetic creatures, like almost like if you're like walking in an office hallway and you see another office door, and they're all in there and they're like kind of like dancing and singing, and there's like this beautiful warm energy that came from that door. And they kind of like started to walk out, like they were like, "Well, this is your choice. You can either continue with him and go, I'm now that I know in hindsight, go back, or you can come to us and kind of get the next attunement of maybe of what the spiritual world has for you." Um and then I part of me wanted to go into the other door, and then I remember my fiancé, his spirit, his soul, I remember him pushing me. He's like, "Love you, goodbye." And he pushes me. And I wake up back to one of my friends who was there with me that night happened to be a pre-med student, and I wake up to my friend screaming over me. And as my other friend, who's the doctor, who's in pre-med or now doctor, is doing chest compressions. And my other friend is on the phone with an EMT, and she's screaming like he's not moving. And apparently in both instances, my body started to turn blue. Like my lip, the color, excuse me, the color in my body was changing. And I wake up, and the funny thing is, I wake up to my other friend calling an ambulance, and I remember waking up and saying, "Hang that phone up. like, because calling an ambulance is like $4,000. I was like, "Don't you dare hang up on that ambulance, call an Uber." Like, I was like, it's like my first reaction of like, "Oh, I just came back, but like, don't do that." So that was my NDE, in undergrad, and I had like
Oh,
4 or
wow.
5 months left of undergrad, and then I finished.
Did you ever require hospitalization?
I didn't. I apparently I mean, I got back up. I just, like, got back up. Like, I just my friend was like, "Are you okay?" I'm like, "Yeah, why? What happened?" She was like, "You stopped breathing. Like, you had no pulse. You were not breathing." And I go, "Yeah, okay." I was like, I didn't really think about it. It was so quick. I didn't really think about it in the moment. And so I just got back up, and then we went to our friend's house for the second part of the party.
Did you did you remember this when you kind of came back into your body?
Yes.
So, what do you think you were doing from a mental aspect? I'm sort of wondering this happens. Like people could mistake this for potentially a dream or something like this. So, how did your brain process it for you?
I'm so glad you asked that because I, in my analytical mind, was like, "Oh, I just dreamt it." I just,
Hmm.
like, fainted and I had a little dream and, like, I just dreamt it, like, no big deal. But the thing for me that differentiates my dream state versus this NDE experience is that it felt so completely external. And I
Mm.
think dreams can be external. I know people can astral project in their dreams and lucid dream. I get that can be external, but it was the physical splitting that I felt each time of my soul or my being was being taken out from the physical human body. That made it feel so much different than a dream. It felt like a completely different world. I felt like I transferred somewhere else.
Now, you explained it like a funnel, like a
Yes.
zoop, like a
Yes.
funnel. I mean, you obviously didn't feel anything at that moment. So, and that was the distinguishment for you. You could totally know you were separated from your body. Did you have like another experience like you did when you were a child seeing the sockets, the eye sockets?
No, this one was different. I think that I don't know if because I was still in grief. I don't know what led that experience to be so different, but it was I did know when I returned back to my body, I did see my body. Like it was above. Like I knew I was coming after he pushed me out that door. I knew I was returning down like like funneling down back into me. And that felt very different than a dream state or when I wake up from a
Do you feel like the same person that you were then?
no. Even before I started doing spiritual stuff, after that NDE, I it just forced me to reconcile that there is more to the world than we humanistically can express or speak to.
Mm,
Also, I think growing up, I have a lot of older family members. My grandmother was 104 when she passed, and I think because of that, I've always been very comfortable with death and dying, but the NDE experience gave me a different level of depth that I think previous conversations or witnessing funerals didn't provide me. So I
mm,
think it changed, and it I will say I felt on a soul level, spiritual, emotional, mental level, I felt different after, and I
that's
couldn't explain the feeling. It just felt different.
it's weird that you recognized it, but have a hard time articulating it, right?
Yes.
I find that so interesting, and I don't know why that happens. Part of it's like we don't even have the language for it. And I'm curious when you were there, when you were on the other side and you were observing the fountain and the bench and all of that, and you was it all white or were there other colors involved? Like sometimes when I meditate and I feel like I go to the other side, there's a difference of colors that I see versus here. And they're like sparkling or glittery. So
Mhm.
I'm sort of wondering, what did you experience when you were there? Was it anything similar to that or was it completely different?
The color part was definitely there, but it was there, like, just, like, in the flowers, like, just in, like, the middle part of the flower. It was very vibrant, and what's really interesting now that I haven't really talked about this in years, now that we're talking about it, it's coming back to me. For me, there was a smell. There was a smell, I know my brain, I don't know what it was, but it was like this light, airy smell of, like, vanilla, like warmth. It felt like if you could describe, like, a hug and a smell, that's what it smelled like, and then the bright colors presented when that second door opened and I saw those spiritual creatures or whatever kind of term you could use for them, because they were not just a creature, they were just, like, beings. Uh,
Beings.
those bright colors were very bright and very, like, very strong and
Mm.
almost, like, fireworky in, like, when you in description, because I think you're right, Miss Cindy. I think there is not a way for our humanistic words to
Yeah.
describe what that was.
It's so hard to articulate in words, I think, for a lot of us who've experienced similar things. I mean, I will share with you just a sidebar for a second because what I saw behind my eye when I tried to throw this duck egg away, that I didn't think there was anything in there, and I was caring for it for several days, and I could not get any signs of life. And I went to toss it, and as soon as I grabbed it with that intention, boom, this like light like came right into my eye, and it was bright but not didn't hurt my eyes. It was in the shape of an egg. It was this white, like divine, like color light with these, I don't know, basic colors like around the outside, like the greens and the reds, but I don't know, they were so much more vibrant and everything was like glittery.
Yes.
Glowing.
Yes.
I don't even know, I don't have the
Mhm.
words for it because it's not of this world. It
Correct.
was like divine intervention. There's something in this egg, and I went downstairs into a darker space, candled it, and sure enough, I had just candled it upstairs. There was no sign of life. I felt a little movement in my hand holding it, and then I saw it moving, and I was like, I almost threw this thing away, and like there's life in it. So like, and I'll show you what it looks like. So I didn't mean to take away your
No,
memory
please.
or thing. I just it's important to talk about because I want people to
Mhm.
understand why it's so difficult for us to, I don't know.
Explain. Yeah.
Yeah,
I think the way you talked about the light with the glitter, that was definitely present when I came to the room. Yes, that's exactly what it felt like, but it felt like more like a like this shape. That's exactly it. Yes. Yes. And that's what also my fiancé looked like from a distance, because I had to walk to the bench where he was sitting, where he appeared. And as I was walking toward him, that's what his outline looked like.
that's so crazy. And like you, we have never really talked prior to this. I mean, you read me one time
Yes,
in a
very
live, but
freaky.
like
Yes.
that's it. We have not done anything. You had no idea, and I had no idea. So
Yes, 'cause
just for
I've never seen that picture before
yeah,
that you
well,
just showed.
from my book because I had this whole thing happen to me, so I had to write it down because 'cause they're knocking on my damn head door saying, "This is what you must do." And this whole podcast is because this is what they want me to do because have a voice that apparently speaks to people in some way that I have shit to say that they think that I have no idea. I'm like, "I'm just a regular person with all these things, and you want me to do what?" But,
I
like,
think it's incredible that you were able to capture that, because I've never seen something captured with such reverence like that before.
that's dim and dull compared to what it
No,
actually looks
yes.
like, but
Mhm.
I threw it into AI to have it recreate, um, what I described to it, and that was the closest it came to what I could see right behind my left eye. I mean, and it when you look at the sun, you get that burn,
Yes. Mhm.
and, then it goes away, but this would not dim. It did not change from that. So I knew it was something completely different. And I just had that one experience and was so changed from all of it. Look at I can't even imagine how this changed you, you know? So tell me more. This
Do
is
you
so
think
amazing.
I know. I do think that the second one in my undergrad, I think it changed me 'Cause it long term, I think it's what led me to read, like, Carl Jung and dream interpretation, and, I also do think that personally needed that closure with my fiancé, and I did think maybe in a long, grand spiritual life opportunity, that was a closure of one part of my life to another.
Mm,
I think
like
when
a
you go
bridge.
through a bridge, exactly. I think when you go through something so specifically unique, or you go through something that's so, um, reflective, like, you reflect on it constantly. I was always thinking about it, for many, many years after about it, and I would research, like, what was that? And I would find kind of a couple similar stories online, but not to that specific. Of course, we all have our own specific version, I think, of that experience, but for me, it helped put away a lot of emotional turmoil that I didn't get to deal with, after he passed. 'Cause I kinda went right into his passing, I went right into school, like, I didn't have the time to kinda really. It was almost like the universe, God, whatever you connect with, pushed me to have this kind of big moment of, like, you deserve to have a closing because you need to allow that, maybe psychologically, mentally, physically, all versions of myself, in order to kind of bridge to the next chapter. I always view my life kind of like a book, and I feel like that was a chapter that was, like, just, like, dragging on to close, and it was like a way that the universe forced me to close it for my better long-term good and goals, I think.
Let me ask you a question, that's more philosophical than it is, like, maybe actual, but because we all go through you're talking about chapters, we all go through certain things, and there's heartache, and there's, like, I don't know, there's good things and bad things and all this other stuff, but, would you have believed your experience had it not been for him sitting there?
Um, I would have still believed it. I don't think it would have emotionally impacted me the
Mm,
same way. I do think, and we'll talk about more about Claire's. For me, my intuition is my most guiding Claire. And I think that part of my intuition is connected to my emotions. And I think that that really showed me the ability that your emotions can be expansive. So I think it would have hit me the same, like, it would have hit me and I would have been like, "Wow." But I don't think it would have made me believe
mm,
emotion the way I needed to, for me to fully walk through that and reanalyze it and look at it in a more life-changing way. So,
and
yes, but not as strongly.
I just feel very strongly, maybe this is my own intuition, maybe this is him speaking, I don't know, but I just feel like if it wasn't him, I don't think it would have had the impact, and I think he had to be the one to be there waiting for you for your own scientific mind.
Yes.
Also think it was, like, set up this way for some reason, and I
Yes.
also feel like he had to be the one to push you out the door.
Yes.
Push you out that door.
Yes, I think so. I think I absolutely agree. I think it did have to be him. I also think the only other person that it
Mhm.
would have been my grandmother, but she was still alive at that time. So it wouldn't have been her, obviously. But yes, I agree. I do think out of all the people, I do think it had to be him. And I do think that there, even in that sense, there is a lesson, in that as well.
Yeah, exactly. Um, so did anything after this? So you have this experience, you come back. Did anything become more important or less important? Like, how did it totally change your perspective?
It really changed my perspective, I think, in the way that, um, I talked about death. I think it also changed my perspective that, like, not only did I, like, like I said, comfortable with death growing up and, like, kind of like the discussion analytical, like, yeah, we die. That's everyone scientifically dies. Your body knows how to die, that kind of thing. But this kind of, you know, solidified the fact of, like, there is going to be more, and that's okay. I did keep it very hidden though. I kept that emotional conversation, I think, because in a way I wanted that to be something that I kept for myself.
Mhm.
Well, maybe until I was ready, or I didn't know what it was. Again, every day I would wake up and be like, did I really have, like, months and months after I was like, did I really happen? Um, but yeah, I think I wanted to be something that I understood fully before I could kind of even have words to talk about it.
It sounds like your conditioning from your family from early on, you know, kind of maybe led you to believe that you definitely needed to understand and validate it yourself first before you then gave the analysis to the
Correct.
rest of everybody else or what have you. I mean, it makes complete sense.
Mhm. I think
From
it made me expansive, and I think it gave me an opportunity to say that, and of course, through more development and learning about it and, like, reading about it, I think it told me that, like, anything is possible.
Why do you think it took a few years before you became aware of your mediumship, and what happened to make you kind of aware of this?
It was not till after I, started mentorship of my own, and I was learning about, my teacher was always saying, "Read about stuff on your own time outside of mentorship and class." And so I like reading, I like researching, so of course, I just dove into everything. I read everything I could get my hands on. I started reading philosophy like Nietzsche and all these other people, and then I started reading about different spiritual people, in like the spiritual worlds. I read about like Buddha and Taoism and all these things, trying to understand what that was. And I think it wasn't until one day one of my friends was like, like people can, have, death experiences. One of my other friends who's spiritual, she's a Reiki practitioner. She was like, people can, like have more under outside of the human world. And I go, yeah, I know, I think so. And she goes, well, look, she said, look what a near death experience is. And I go, what is that? So of course run to the libraries. I started researching, and then I found other people's stories, and
Mm.
that's what clicked. And I was like, oh, I'm not the only one who's experienced this, and it might be even more prevalent than we think it is. People just aren't talking about it maybe as openly, because it is a very, unique experience. Maybe for some people, like mine, it is connected to a lot of emotion.
Mhm.
It's just not something you just go like, "Hi, my name is Matan, and I had a near-death experience." It just isn't something that comes up
Yeah.
in
What?
conversation.
All
Uh,
the time.
but I think through my mentorship and my development, my spiritual awakening, and all that, I think it helped me reanalyze that experience. And maybe even more, it brought more light and positivity and enlightenment to the situation versus shock and overwhelm versus, after it happened in college.
Was there something that triggered or happened to make you aware that you were hearing spirit, or did you seek it out? Like, what happened?
Yes, great question. So I call myself a pandemic spiritualist, as a joke because as we all did, we all went through COVID. And at the time, I noticed in kind of a general theme for everybody that when your spiritual awakening happens, you either are going through a loss of your own, a traumatic event, or all or both in some sort of interconnection. And so for me, at the time the pandemic started, I lost my job. Um, I was just divorced. So it and everything came to a halt. So it really made me have I think, spiritual reflection, not just on who I wanted to be moving forward, but like just in general of what was happening for everybody. And it really became a conversation where, we as humans had to accept and have conversation around death on a large scale. And through that, I started to see things out of the corner of my eye at night or during the day, and I would be like, that whole thing. But the funny thing was, it wasn't the individuals that I would see weren't my loved ones, they were other people's loved ones.
Right. The randos. I call them the randos. They just kind of,
Mhm, the randos, yes, and one of the randos that I had was my now ex-husband's father or grandfather who died while we were together. And
mm,
then he would just sit in my room, in the corner of my room, and he would just stare at me, and I'd be like, "Who are you?" Because I never saw a picture of him. And I was like, "Who are you? Go away." And he would stand there for weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks. And it got to the point as it continued, other spirits were showing up, and some were showing themselves more in a physical form where I could see their expressions and realize who they were. Others, same thing, the kind of shadowy of the outline. It got to the point where I was not sleeping, to the point where I was sleeping maybe 2, 3 hours a night, and if not, I was then staying up for days at a time, crashing, days at a time, crashing. Um,
Holy mackerel, man.
yes, I was just it was intense, and I was one day just scrolling on TikTok because we were all in the pandemic, so we're on TikTok, and I come across a live of my mentor, and she's in a live discussing what happens when people pass, specifically when children pass. Where do they go? How is their journey and experience could be different, you know? So I'm just, like, listening, and she's bringing up things about, like, her spiritual stuff, and I was like, "Oh, that's very interesting because that I can connect with and understand." And so, still in my skeptical mindset, I was like, I went to her and I said, "I need you to teach me how to turn it off. I need you to," because I felt like I was having a schizophrenic break where I spent thousands of dollars on tests like scans, CT, everything my analytical brain, again, was like, "You're gonna go and you're gonna make sure that there's nothing wrong with you, A to Z, like nothing physical," and there wasn't.
Of course not.
Of course not. So then what? So then, of course, my brain is like, well, now what? I can't use science as an excuse for what's happening. So I need to understand in a different way.
Yeah, it's this is my egg. You stopped resisting and then you sort of surrendered. I'm sure you still went kicking and screaming just a little bit too, because
Every single step.
that's so funny. So you obviously were led to your mentor, who I assume is Stacy, correct?
No, Stacy's actually my friend that
Oh,
I
okay.
met through TikTok. My mentor is Mariana Clemens, who
Okay.
she's, I think, Soul Tarot on TikTok. So
Mm.
it's not Stacy. I met Stacy just through the app later, luckily. But yeah.
So what led you to Heaven's Hospital and your relationship with Stacy and into mentorship?
Great question. So initially, when I started the spiritual stuff, I was a tarot reader. And I
Mm.
would read for people, and things would also continuously come through, so that in parallel, I was reading cards and doing mentorship myself, and that kinda led to me coming on TikTok like other people have, and I was reading on TikTok with a mutual of Stacy's at the time, and Stacy at the time was doing, lives where people could come up and read with her. Anybody who felt like reading could do so. And I started just like popping up, and I was like, conversating with her, saying hello. And one night she came onto my live when I was pulling cards, and we just clicked. It just, I don't know how to explain it. I'm very, my lives are very open and honest. I'll sometimes be reading, sometimes I'll be making jokes, maybe inappropriate jokes. And she came right up with me and made inappropriate jokes with me to the point that where, like, I was like, which makes it takes a lot for me to be startled. And so she made told me a story, and I was like, "Oh, wow, I can really hang out with her. She's funny, she's laughs with me, we make jokes." And that built our relationship where we would talk 3 or 4 or 5 times a day for hours on end. We shared, our spiritual experiences. We talked about our awakenings, or, what that was like for each of us and the connection there. And so one day we decided to, read more formally together on TikTok. And from there, that's where we developed Heaven's Hospital, because we wanted to build a platform for people where my goal, and I think where her and I's overlap is, you know, my goal is to bring a space for somebody where they can take off their shoes. Maybe if that's through cards sometimes, maybe if it's through mediumship, but it's a place that we can hold someone in their space for themselves for an hour without judgment.
Yeah, I think that that's really important because people are looking for the connection to their loved ones. They don't really know if they're okay. They don't really know all these things. And so any ease that you could um, bring to them is really important. And that brings me to my next question, right? What do you what do you wish more people understood about what happens after we pass and the fear around that?
I love that you said the word fear. I think, unfortunately, we live in a world, and I think it's getting better. I think that we have engaged and grown in this, but I think that we live in a world that has kind of societalized the fear around death and dying and grief. Um, I think that my biggest thing for people is that it's okay to be scared.
Mhm.
It's okay to be scared. I think this is where my grad school part of me comes in. I think fear is unfortunately an uncomfortable experience, but it's also an important experience, and it's okay to be feared or have fear around things we don't know. I do believe that faith and fear can go together, or they do sometimes, but it's very complicated. But I do think fear is a starter of a conversation. If you say to me, "Oh, this I think this is fearful and this scares me," then I want to go, "Well, why? Let's talk about it. Let's discover what emotions and experiences are pushing that narrative, that fear about death, and what happens."
I
So
concur. I also feel like people, are attached to people and things, and I think that, losing that, they have a hard time with the physical versus continuing to follow the thread with the connection. It's almost like we've been shamed as a society wholly over so many years to not even trust ourselves or not even believe that they have the ability, they themselves, to have the connection without understanding we, the medium, are being able to read their person because they brought them to us.
correct,
You know?
correct.
And so I feel like if you were to say to someone like, "Hey, I totally understand, it's skepticism. Your whole background has been in science, right?" What would you tell them to have them maybe start trusting that thing and experiencing the connection without needing to have like an NDE, such as what you went through?
I think the biggest thing with discovery is giving yourself grace in discovery. I think that and I have seen this a lot with my students, is that my sometimes they expect to be like me, or they expect to be like, out the gate like a perfectionist, like I'm also had to work through. And I think you have to give yourself grace in the exploration of more, of the idea that we have more after death. Um, I also think sometimes it's about some things just happen, that they have to happen the way they do, and we have to let go of the control of it happening.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think we as humans, I think why death is so scary to humans is because it is the great equalizer.
Mhm.
And I think part of that is that it reminds us that we are human. I think
Mhm.
there's a duality that comes with death and living, and death and dying, and because I think beautiful things can happen in such a painful sorrow experience. And in part of that exploration, I think is finding our version of where we put it together and get a bit of both.
What piece of advice would you give somebody who might be feeling like they're connecting to their loved one, but they're not certain?
Um, I always say listen to what you feel intuitively. And when I say that, I think it's, if you are feeling these moments, you're having vision, whatever visions, feelings, thoughts, pay attention to what is happening also. So, like, if you are, for example, if you smell your grandmother's perfume or smell, do you have a reaction physically with it? Pay attention to those slight moments and see how they build. And also, how do you feel in those moments? Because in my experience, those moments come with great, profound peace. It doesn't feel threatening. It's okay to accept that maybe something's happening that we don't have words for.
I completely agree. What is the one thing or few things that what you feel people often are concerned about, but they don't have anything to be concerned about regarding their loved one who've crossed?
I think the biggest thing that I see the most is people will ask me, are they at peace?
Mm.
Right? I think this leads into the idea of, like, if, after they pass, they're going to hell, right? And for me, faith-wise, growing up Jewish people, we don't believe in hell. So for me, it was hard to conceptualize that. But that is the biggest thing, that people are fearful that like when they die, they will go to hell or something will happen, that they'll be in like this dark space or this subliminal space. That's the biggest, again, fear or experience that is expressed to me or asked of me. And I say, well, there's just our loved ones wouldn't come to us if they were trapped or if they were in a subliminal dangerous spot. It just doesn't happen. Like they just the energy, the feeling of I like to say love truly that comes when our loved ones, present themselves to us is wouldn't happen if they were in a bad place or they were trapped. I don't think that exists.
I mean, even to say trapped is kind of absurd. I had this discussion on my live earlier this morning where I'm like, so let me get this straight. You're suddenly consciousness or a soul, and you are going to the divine place. Where is it that you would get stuck at? Number one. And two, why would a human need to help you cross to begin with? So don't fall for the banana in the tailpipe because that just makes no logical sense in terms of the intelligence. So here we have this greater intelligence who clearly you went from point A to point B without any problem. It took set mere seconds, right? Okay. Like why would you get stuck? Are you getting stuck on a hook? Are you getting stuck? What are you getting stuck on?
Right, absolutely. And I think this is also where the dynamics of the reader to the sitter, um, the person getting the reading for the people listening, is that um, you have to make sure that you bring trust and you have to build the trust with the sitter, right? Like I can't just tell the sitter, "Hey, trust me." Well, like what does that mean? Like trust you? Like I mean, I came to you, but like I don't know you. You know what I mean? Like there's a
There's
level.
nothing earned yet. Yeah.
Correct. I do believe that you have to build trust. You have to earn that trust, or
Mhm.
you can say to these sitters, "Trust me, I you may not fully know or have not worked on the ability to do it yourself, but trust me to know that I am coming, that your loved one is coming to me and they are at peace." There is a level of power that comes with that I think is part of the privilege that we get to be able to do that work for these people.
I
And
just see these people as snowflakes in our hands,
mhm, mhm,
They're very delicate and they're all different, and we have that power in our hands, and we need to have great ethics to be able to hold that space for them
absolutely.
in an
100.
honest way.
I think also, I think part of like why people are fearful of death and why people always ask like, are they at peace, et cetera, et cetera. I think is because, again, this sounds very therapist of me, but the development of your life, right? If you're being told your whole life that when you die, you're gonna go to, if you're bad, you're gonna, it's a reactatory, like, you're going to hell, or in my case, that's crazy. You're just a crazy person, that kind of negative viewpoint forms at a very young age. I mean, children are taught things, they're not born with it, right? And so as time goes on and you're a child and you have these experiences, for some people, not for me, but for other people, and the immediate response of the person, that your loved one, your parent, your guardian, whoever, it goes, no, that's bad, bad, shame, shame. Shame is a very powerful emotion, and it's very interlocked with the way that we develop our conversation around death.
Mhm.
Uh,
Not just death, about a lot of things
everything.
around,
Yes.
yeah,
Yes.
sexuality, our
Absolutely.
intimacy, our,
Yes.
work ethics, like, it's a lot, yeah. Yeah, it's a lot. And anyway, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, no, absolutely. No, I agree. It's everything is so, and I truly believe, and this is the reality with with the work we do. You have a moment. Everything in my life, I believe, is a ripple. Right? That ripple. As soon as that initial ripple of whatever it is hits the pond, you have mere seconds. Just like I had mere seconds when I got swooped into the air, whirled up in the air. You have a slight second to make a ripple in someone's life. And I think that, that you have a slight ripple moment to maybe change someone's perspective, or support them in their own discovery of that fear around death maybe isn't there. And that maybe there is something more.
And that's why I offer this podcast and I do the lives. And I'm basically trying to reach as many people as possible or whoever is drawn to it for whatever reason, because I'm trying to make those ripples. I'm trying to help walk people home. That's what I'm trying to do.
I love that you said home because one of my friends who had ALS, she was also a very profound mentor of mine and taught me before my NDE actually, about how I asked her one day, I said I said, "Kathy, what do you think is gonna happen after you die?" And we were sitting outside and we were looking at, whoa, I always get so emotional about this story because it's so beautiful. She was talking about, we were sitting outside and there was light coming through the trees. And she says, I hope one day I evaporate into the crystallization of the light.
Wow, I love
Yeah.
that.
And of course, in retrospect, I look about how profound that was for
Mhm.
me. But I think it plays into, I like to describe the other side. I think that it's more, it is peaceful. There is more that there's less shame and fear around the process than the actuality of the journey of death.
Yeah, I agree. And I personally haven't found that they have anyone who crosses or transitions has like shed their ego, shed all their human ways. So they're just back into that divine light, that divine self, and like they want what's best for you. They don't, it's like you run across Pee Wee Herman.
Yes.
Like, see it this way. It's like sticks and stones may break my bone. Like nothing affects Pee Wee Herman. He does not have that ego, right? He's just sort of happily kind of going through life. And that's how I see spirit. It's
No,
just
I
like
absolutely.
nothing affects you, you know? And so like all the things that would affect us here, and this is for the listeners, I understand it at a much deeper level than Pee Wee Herman. Just using a human just so that they
Yes.
understand, it's gone, and so their person will maybe come through and say some scary things about how they were or their passing or whatever. That does not mean that they're like that still. That does not mean. They're just giving us their personality and how they live the life here. So,
Correct.
I don't know.
I call those grounding points when I talk about my to my students or other people about when we do readings or confirmation, they're a grounding point. So they're gonna come through to us how they were in life because those are important remembrances for the sitter. Yes, my, blah, 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 uncle, grandma, whoever was like that in life. But then, of course, I always say that, like, especially when there's a lot of apologies that are being brought to by spirit, I go, this is how they feel and about what they've done in life and they realize that through their life review, which is where they get to see everything for the listeners who are listening about like what they did in life, how they affected people through that process, I think they get brought back into the peace that's on the other side because I think I want to say earned their way in. That's not how that works, but it realigns them to the peace that the other side provides.
Beautifully said. Thank you. Is there anything else that you'd like to bring awareness to the audience about?
I think that no, I think it's a beautiful journey. Like my wonderful friend Stacy says, it is a journey. And I think that it's okay that all of our journeys can look different. It doesn't mean that one journey is right or wrong, of course. I just think that we come from different perspectives of the same prism of light. We look at it at different angles, but together it builds us a grander story.
And it looks really beautiful when the light shines on it.
Yes, absolutely.
A collage or a quilt of light, right?
Mhm.
Pretty. Thank you, Matan, for being here. If anyone would like to get in touch with you, how can they reach you?
Yes, great question. I am M Fox on TikTok. That's my main platform that I utilize. And of course, if you want to book with me and my partner Stacy, or who's Journey with Gurney on TikTok, you can go to heavenshospital.com, heavens with an S.com.
Great. Thank you so much for being here. I
Thank you
appreciate
so
you.
much. Thank you so much for having me.
You're so welcome. It was a great conversation, and I'd like to have you back and kind of get into some more things, like because there was a lot between your NDE and then
Yes.
I wanna
Yes.
explore all that a little bit more and how that kind of worked for you, but another conversation for another day. Thank
Wonderful.
you, Matan.
Thank you, Miss Cindy.
All right, take care.